Is there a verse that specifically says that someone can be saved after the death? Well, just of course they can. That's what it's just in the whole tenor. It's all woven throughout the Scriptures. That's why I think we don't have a more specific scriptural example of this. Again, although I would say that it's hard to get more specific than Peter did on the day of Pentecost when he said, "This promise is to you, to your descendants, and to all who are afar off." Well, having said all that, I think we have a very important question in front of us. Then why do some Christians believe that some of the gifts of the Spirit have passed away from the church today? I mean, if it's this compelling, if it makes this much sense, then where's the disagreement? Well, I would say that the first mistake that those people make is, first of all, they have a wrong understanding of history. There are many Christians who believe that history teaches us that the gifts of the Holy Spirit vanished when the apostles died. That you won't find records of miraculous gifts or sign gifts, as they term them, happening after the death of the apostles. And they say, well, we have to explain this somehow. After all, history says they vanished. Folks, let me just tell you right off, history does not say that they vanished. Let me just make this sufficient to say that from all of my historical research, and I've made it as extensive as I could, I am firmly persuaded that if you were to go up to a Christian, an everyday Christian, in the year 200, that's 2 or 3 generations after the apostles died. If you were to go up to a normal everyday Christian in the year 200 and say, wow, I mean, things must really be different now that the gifts of the Holy Spirit passed away when the apostles died, they'd look at you and they'd say, what, are you crazy? What are you talking about? You should know that it wasn't well until more around the year 300 that Christians started saying, maybe they passed away. Nobody was saying that before that time. Now, secondly, some Christians believe this because they have a wrong understanding of 1 Corinthians 13, 8 through 10. I want you to turn to that passage because we need to take a look at this. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verses 8 through 10. This is, in the mind of some people, a proof text which says the gifts of the Holy Spirit are not for today. 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 8. It says, love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will fail. Where there are tongues, they will cease. Where there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. Now, what's Paul's main point in this passage of 1 Corinthians 13? The main message of the passage is that the gifts of the Holy Spirit are appropriate for the present time, but they're not permanent. In eternity, in heaven, you won't need the gift of prophecy. In the age to come, you won't need these supernatural gifts. The gifts of the Holy Spirit are gifts given for an imperfect time. When the perfect has come, they won't be needed anymore. Now, notice it exactly in verse 10, where Paul says, when that which is perfect has come, then that which is in part will be done away. There are Bible teachers who grab a hold of that verse and say that based on that, the certain gifts of the Holy Spirit, the miraculous gifts of the Holy Spirit, are not for today. They say in verse 10, that which is in part means the miraculous gifts of the Holy Spirit. I scratch my head at that one. I don't know where it says that. But secondly, they say, verse 10, that which is perfect, they say, refers to, again, in the minds of some, the most commonly heard explanation I hear from this camp within the Christian circle is that which is perfect refers to the completion of the New Testament. And so once the New Testament was complete, you didn't need these miraculous gifts anymore, and they passed from the scene. Well, I have to say that virtually all commentators agree that that which is perfect is when we are in the eternal presence of the perfect one. It's eternity. I don't see any scriptural basis whatsoever for saying that it refers to the completion of the New Testament. I could quote for you many, many passages in the New Testament where this same ancient Greek word for perfect is used for exact reference for the eternal state or the coming of Jesus. And so some people say that. Here's another argument that some people bring out. It's based on verse 8. Look at verse 8, where it says, love never fails, but whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. Many who believe that the miraculous gifts ended with the apostles claim that this says that the miraculous gifts will pass away. Specifically, they say the gift of tongues. Because notice, verse 8 again, prophecies, he says, they will fail. Tongues, they will cease. Knowledge, it will vanish away. The explanation that they give goes something like this. The verb translated, tongues will cease, they say that the ancient Greek grammar of that verb, they call it it's in the middle voice, not in the passive. They say that this could be translated, tongues will stop by themselves. But friends, let me lay this out to you. That analysis may sound scholarly, but it's disregarded by virtually every scholar of the ancient Greek language. Matter of fact, I can't name for you a single Greek scholar who supports the idea that 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 8 says that tongues will vanish from the scene, after the apostles are dead. But I want you to know that even if that translation is correct, it does nothing to suggest when tongues will cease. Even if it does mean that tongues will cease all on their own, does it say when? Is there an expiration date on there? Does it say tongues will cease when the last apostle dies? Does it say tongues will cease all by themselves when the New Testament's written? Tongues will cease all on their own? No, it's just not there at all. But the bottom line is this, is that this passage does not tell us that tongues will stop by themselves. Well then, what does Paul mean there in verse 8? Well, friends, sometimes you can make something out of nothing in biblical analysis. Look at it again. Whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there are knowledge, they will vanish away. What is Paul saying? Paul is just saying that these gifts won't last forever. And when the perfect has come, the return of Jesus Christ, they will vanish away. Paul's whole big point in 1 Corinthians 13, because these things are destined to pass away, why don't you keep your real focus on that which is going to last even into eternity, and that's agape love. That's what the chapter's all about. Don't let your interest in the gifts overpass or lord over your passion for agape love among God's people. That's the whole lesson of 1 Corinthians 13. Well, then why does Paul say, will fail, will cease, will vanish? You want to know why? Because underneath the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, he was a good writer. Good writers don't say the same thing in the same words 3 times in a row. They use slightly different words to describe the exact same idea because it's good writing. Paul means the same thing when he says will fail, will cease, will vanish. He's using slightly different words to describe exactly the same idea. So, some people misunderstand what Paul writes here in 1 Corinthians 13, and they take it as meaning that the gifts of the Holy Spirit, or at least some of them, are destined to pass away. Now let me show you one other reason why some people believe that the gifts of the Holy Spirit are not for today. And that's found in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. This is a common misunderstanding. Hebrews chapter 2, verses 1 through 4. We read, "Therefore, we must give the more earnest heed to the things we have heard, lest we drift away. For if the word spoken through angels proved steadfast, and every transgression and disobedience received a just reward, how shall we escape if we neglect so great a salvation, which at the first began to be spoken by the Lord, and was confirmed to us by those who heard him, God also bearing witness, both with signs and wonders, with various miracles and gifts of the Holy Spirit according to his own will. Now, do you see what it says about signs and wonders, miracles and gifts of the Holy Spirit? About those things in this passage? What it says about them is that those things attest to the divine origin of the message of Jesus. In other words, one of the reasons you know that Jesus really did bring a message from God was that it was witnessed to by signs and wonders, various miracles, and gifts of the Holy Spirit.